as I was sitting here working on a project, I could hear the little voices outside of this little group of young girls that live in the neighborhood. And it's just so sweet seeing them come together and play and use their imagination and see how they've set up their toys and just have so much energy and so much expression in their life. And it's something I've really been reflecting on a lot as I continue to work with God and feel more comfortable being his daughter and being viewed as his daughter and behaving as his daughter. I had a realization maybe like a year and a half ago as I was doing some inner child work. And what really struck me was how much, well, I guess what I would say, instead of inner child work, I feel like it's getting back to the root of our essence, like our true spirit that's in us. And when we came to earth in those very early years, in that early stages of our development, we didn't have a lot of feedback yet or distortions layered on us yet. And so we were just this very vibrant, expressive person. And over time, that light got dimmed. And I mean, hopefully not, but as life transpires, sometimes we encounter circumstances, and just based on our interpretation of it in the moment and based on our skill sets and resources and support systems we have in place, we either are able to process those experiences in a healthy, fully realized way, or sometimes they get trapped and they get distorted and then skew how we view ourselves and what's safe and available for us in the world. And so in going back and looking, okay, how was I as a child? Like, what were some of the key attributes and things that really lit me up and made me super excited? And as I go back and look at that, I think, okay, that's getting me closer to who my spirit really is, who I really am. And then it becomes this work of alignment of seeing where I currently don't feel or believe that these things are true, and working with God, with Jesus, with the Spirit, with my own spirit, to come back into congruence with what is accurate and true for me. And really, really looking at children as the blueprint, right, of what we want to get back to. Yes, there are things we need to teach them, and strategies and etiquette and just rules of polite society. But I think so often we shut down the no's, we shut down the opinions, we shut down that energy because it feels inconvenient, or it triggers something in us where we were not able to express ourselves in that way without recrimination. So now we feel like we have to pass the torch and do that to other people. So the more aware we become of these patterns, and the more we really look to children as a role model, so to speak, that there are just these innate aspects of their human nature that is really their divine nature that's coming out. And that it's not our job to squash that, but to really water that and nurture it and help it to grow. And it reminded me of a poem that I looked up because I wanted to share it. But it comes from the Prophet, written by Khalil Gibran, and it's the piece on children. And I just love this perspective, and I think that if more of us really felt this way and saw the dynamic between like adult or parent and child in this sort of flipped way or more accurate way, that life would be so much more pleasant for them, and we actually would find a lot more joy and peace in our life. Because I know from my own personal experience with my children, I mean, they are so insanely wise. I feel like they came down with so much wisdom and so much just embodied strength that they know who they are, and they are not bending to other people's opinions. And that is so inspiring to me, because I feel like I tended towards being quite opposite, where, oh, you need me to be this way? Okay, I'll be this way to be convenient. Oh, you need this from me? Okay, you can have this from me. Versus knowing who I was and standing firm in that. And so a lot of the transformation that I'm experiencing is honestly not only inspired because I want to be better for my kids and be a really great role model for them, but honestly, letting my children be a role model for me and picking up on the things that just come naturally to them. And there have definitely been times where I've wanted to suppress that or squash that, and then realize, no, I didn't like that happening to me, so I'm not going to perpetuate that. I'm not going to do that to them as well. So that kind of really hits home in this portion of the poem. So it says, your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. And I think that that's such an important distinction, that they are God's children. We are the vessel through which they come, but they are still their own person, and ultimately God is sovereign over all of the experiences that he brings to us. So it says, you may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit even in your dreams. And I just really like that piece of it, because focus on giving them love, supporting, nurturing them, and see what's coming from them, versus trying to implant in them our thoughts, our programming, our limited ways of believing in life. And I know a lot of times we think it's coming from a place of love. We want to protect them. We don't want them to get their hopes up, or to have their hopes dashed, or to experience loss or pain. And so we think that by, shutting down all their desires or minimizing them, that somehow will protect them, when really it just creates distance and dissatisfaction within them, because their spirit knows what they've come down here to do. And when we send them mixed messages like, no, that's not safe, that's not available, that's not something you can do, or that's not something we do, it just really creates tension. And I love this part. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you. For life goes not backward, nor tarries with yesterday. And I just think that that is something that we all as parents can really benefit from, shifting that perspective. Instead of coming in as the all-knowing, this is how it has to be. No, we in fact may be quite wrong. And again, it's not to say, oh, hands off, let them do what they want. They still need that guidance. They still need that nurturing and that protection. But are we coming at it from a place of fear and stifling their inner fire and their inner purpose? Or are we truly connected with God and saying, how can I be a benefit to them and help them to realize their full potential? And this kind of ties into this. You are the bows from which your children as living arrows are sent forth. So you are still necessary, and you become that catalyst that allows them to take flight. It says, the archer sees the mark upon the path of the infinite, and he, God, bends you with his might, that his arrows may go swift and far. Let your bending in the archer's hand be for gladness, for even as he loves the arrows that fly, he loves also the bow that is stable. And I just really love how he articulates that in the poem, that it's this symbiotic and necessary relationship between both the parent and the child. And as much as our children's job is not to provide for us, that relationship is one way. It needs to be coming from us to them, that protection, that love, that care. But that we also serve a benefit in helping them reach their highest expressed self. And I think of it in terms of like God allowing us to get a glimpse of what it's like, because he doesn't have full control over us, right? Yes, he is powerful enough that he could bend us to his will, but he doesn't. He allows us to come into this life and to learn and to make mistakes and to grow. And so allowing that same freedom and benefit to our children, not being lackadaisical and loose and having no structure for them, but when they express something that feels off to us, or that feels like, well, that's not how it's supposed to be done, that we can take a step back and be a little bit curious and become more childlike and say, maybe they're onto something. Maybe there's something that I've been suppressing for so long, and that's why it feels weird. It's something that I wish I could have expressed as a child, but it was shut down. And now I see them expressing it, and it's triggering grief and remorse, maybe even fear, because that liveliness that you expressed was met with punishment. Maybe you were too loud or too bouncing off the walls, or can't you just be calm and be quiet? And I think a lot of, society is shifting away from that. There's a lot more tolerance and love and acceptance of children. But I think even in this typical school settings, right? Or even in church or something where it's like, be quiet, sit down, don't move, be almost an automaton and don't have any needs, be easy to manage so that life is easier for other people. So I just invite you to, the next time you interact with your children or you see children out and about, especially when they're in that expressive, creative state, to just get very intrigued and curious and almost observe and say, how can I be inspired by this? How can I take some lessons from these children and bring more of that joy and creativity and openness into my own life? And to take that posture more so with our Heavenly Father, to let Him be the Father, let us be the child, have some fun and not make it all so dreary and sad and hard. And, yes, things require effort, but it can be done in a way that feels energizing. And that's the biggest thing that I've come to realize is, as I'm really aligned with my purpose and what God has called me to do, I can just do the work. It is not draining. In putting forth the effort and taking the action, I'm actually getting more energy in doing it, versus when I'm doing something that is not in alignment with my mission, my purpose, my perfection and progression, then those become draining activities. So that's another way that we can kind of lock in and see, okay, am I aligned with my true self, who I came to earth to be, who was most fully realized in my very, very younger years? And learning to nurture that part and allow her to be more expressed, and let the more serious, strict side loosen up a little bit, especially if it's these kind of man-made constraints. Obviously, we don't want to loosen up on what God says is true or what God commands us to do or not do, because those are protections for us, right? It's Him being that parent who is setting the parameters, who's creating a disciplined, structured environment for us to thrive within. We want to emulate that same parenting with our children, but then also allowing for them to have that expression of their agency, of who they truly are, even if it feels so different from how we are or how we were raised, that we can tune into what the Spirit is teaching us about our children so that we can really be more like God, allow them to be more like themselves, which in turn leads them back to being more like God. And I just testify that as Jesus encourages us to be like a little child, that there is a lot of joy and a lot of peace and contentment that comes from getting into that mindset, not childish, being immature or unhelpful, but being just in awe of life and so tapped into all the love and energy that is out there for us to create. And I just testify of these things in the name of Jesus Christ.